let's talk about how to write a book in 2023. Hey, what's up you guys? I'm Sara Lubratt and I have 10 tips for you guys today on how to write a book this year. So if you go on to enjoy this video, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit the thumbs up button because it really supports my channel. And now without further ado, let's talk about how to write a book this year. Tip number 1, you already probably know because you are currently watching this video, which means that you have an idea for a book. But tip number 1 is to figure out the premise of whatever story you want to be working on. The premise is the answer to a what if question. So the premise that J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, came up with for Harry Potter was, what if a young boy who doesn't know about magic goes to a wizarding school? And if you know the premise for your story, you're already in good shape. My second tip is to figure out to some extent what the book is going to be about. Maybe a little bit about what the plot is going to do, maybe where the book starts or where the book ends, or who some of your characters are. Writers span a whole spectrum of how much they want to know about a book before they begin writing it. I tend to fall much more on the pantser side of things rather than the plotter side of things. Plotters like to know what's going on. Me as a pantser likes to pretty much have a gist of the story, aka my premise, and maybe a couple of the characters, and maybe where the story is going. But ultimately, I don't know how I'm gonna get to the end of the book. I fly by the seat of my pants and I figure it out as I'm writing. If you're not sure which one you are, you can always start out with a little bit of writing, and if you feel like you don't have enough information about your story or your world yet, you can plot a little bit more. In one of the creative writing classes that I took in college, they did recommend that you know at least 3 things about at least your main character, and that is, what is their biggest fear, what is their biggest secret, and what is their biggest motivation, which could be tied to either their secret or their fear. And the reason that these 3 things were suggested to know about your characters before you begin writing is to help inform why your character is making the decisions that they're making. If you want to go a little bit further into the plotting side of things, a tip I have for you after watching Brandon Sanderson's creative writing class is to figure out which of the 3 P's is going to be satisfied in each chapter. And that is either promise, progress, or payoff. These 3 things work really well together in propelling the story and making the eventual ending seem really satisfactory. So now that you know a little bit about your story, let's get into tip number 3. Figure out what your goal is. Is the story you're writing a short story, a novella, a novel? You might want to figure out roughly what the length of the project you're working on is going to end up being. And if you don't know, that's totally okay. If you kind of have a gist of the genre, so if it's fantasy, sci-fi, contemporary, romance, whatever it's going to be, you can look up the average length of that genre and or age category to help figure out what the average length of book is to give you something to start shooting for. Once you have your goal, you can start figuring out how you want to break down that goal. Do you want to finish writing your book in 3 months, 6 months, a year? If finishing the project in a certain amount of time is really important to you, pick a deadline and start working towards it. Tip number 4 kind of blends in with tip number 3, but that's to figure out when you write best. And part of this is to figure out what time of day you write best, if there are certain days that you have more time or that you write better, especially if you can't write every day. A lot of people cannot write every single day, so it's trying to figure out what days you can write and what times of day you can write and write best at to most optimize your time, because we all have very, very busy lives. We all have a lot of other things going on, but once you can start nailing in the times that you write and start protecting that writing time, you're gonna see great results. Tip number 5 for after when you've started scheduling your writing time is to start tracking your writing. And when I say tracking your writing, I mean tracking your progress. Writing a book is very much a marathon, but in tracking your progress, it helps make the progress seem more bite-sized and seem more realistic and shows you that you are really making progress, even if some days it feels like you're not. I personally use a color-coordinated spreadsheet when I'm tracking my writing time. It's just really fun to look back over my previous days and my previous months and look at how many of the days I was able to write, look at how many words I was able to write each day, and just show myself that progress, that I am moving forward, which then also helps me stay really inspired to keep writing because I've seen my progress and I know what I can do, which makes me want to keep going. Tip number 6 is to try and cut down on your distractions when you're writing. This does kind of blend in with protecting your writing time, but I saw so much change for myself when I really went from, oh, I'm just going to write for a few minutes to, no, this is my writing time. I'm going to protect this. I'm going to tell my family members that I'm writing. I'm going to put my phone on do not disturb or throw it on my couch, or at least put it somewhere that is out of like arm's length distance where I can grab it and then check social media. As long as I can't touch my phone, I'm immediately more focused. I'll turn the notifications off on my computer, or I'll turn my Wi-Fi off. Just something that helps me stay so much more present with the page. So now that you have your writing time scheduled and you have your distractionless writing turned on, for tip number 7, I want to recommend writing sprints and productive breaks. A writing sprint is when you have a designated amount of time, whether that's indicated by a timer or you just know that you're going to sit down and write for a certain amount of time, but giving your writing dedicated writing time where you're like, like, okay, I'm gonna sit down for 15, 30, 45 minutes, whatever it is, and just write. That is the one priority. That's the only thing I'm doing, is just sitting down and writing. Writing sprints were a game changer for me. I don't know how I wrote without them, honestly. I know that I used to, and I also know that I would spend a lot more time with a lot more distractions getting not as many words done. This has very much come with practice for me, but I'm so happy that I'm finally here. And then in combination with writing sprints, I've discovered that productive breaks tend to do really, really well for me, because I have my dedicated writing time in my 30-minute or whatever writing sprint. And then as soon as that's over, I'll stand up, I'll do my dishes, I'll clean my kitchen, I'll do something that takes like 15 or 20 minutes, but something that is productive and often cleans my space while keeping my hands busy and my mind free to keep working on the things that I was writing. Because then I've noticed that when I go back to sit back down for my next writing sprint, my brain's been working on whatever I was writing the last time. So when I sit back down in my chair, I'm ready to go again. By far, my most productive writing sessions are when I'm switching between the writing sprints and my productive breaks. Tip number 8. Rewards. We are not above bribing here. If you are finding yourself struggling towards your next writing goal, whether that's the next 1,000 words, the next 10,000 words, finishing a draft, whatever it may be, or if you just want to celebrate your little wins, which I also really recommend doing, set up rewards. Maybe you give yourself a piece of chocolate every 100 words. Maybe you do something a little bigger every 1,000 words. I had a celebration every time I hit 10,000 words when I was doing National Novel Writing Month a couple years ago. Whereas a little personal celebration, I would lean back in my chair and go, woo! It still makes me smile every time we do it. So whatever is going to inspire you to keep going, and whatever is going to help you celebrate those little wins and celebrate you writing your book, because you were doing an amazing thing in writing a book. You need to celebrate it. I have friends that have bought themselves birthday cakes or new bookshelves or new books when they finished a draft. Figure out what's going to motivate you and then establish those rewards for when those things happen. Tip number 9, don't let those ideas go to waste. Every single time you have an idea for the story that you are working on, or any other story for that matter, write it down. I used to keep all of my random little ideas on Post-it notes, and then I could never find the Post-it note again. I have learned from my mistakes, and now I keep all of my ideas for each book that I'm working on and that each book that I have worked on in the past in its own document. For the book that I'm currently working on, I call it Project DE. So for Project DE, I have a notes document that is literally called Project DE Notes. Any idea I've had goes in this notes document. That way I can find it later. Even if I choose not to use it, I have it and I didn't lose it. But don't let yourself forget those ideas. Write them down. And if you write them down somewhere else in like a notebook or something, or on a random scrap piece of paper, just make sure that you transfer it over into the same place as all of your other notes for that book idea. Again, so that everything is in the same place. Tip number 10 is kind of fun because I recommend setting up a Pinterest board for your book and making a music playlist. The things that I have pinned to my Pinterest boards for each of my books in the past are like a picture that reminds me of one of my characters, maybe an outfit, maybe a piece of scenery, maybe a quote, maybe a color, maybe a weapon. Literally anything that I see on Pinterest that reminds me of the story that I'm working on or one of my many back burner projects. It's another way to make ideas happen for the story, as well as an easy thing to go back to scroll through your Pinterest board whenever you need to get back into the headspace of your world, or if you need to be reminded about how it feels to be writing your book and how it feels to be in the world of your story. This is also really fun to do with a music playlist. Every single one of my book projects has a playlist and a Pinterest board. So sometimes if I'm driving back to my apartment and I know that I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write, I will listen to the playlist for my book in the car on my way back. If I've been sitting in my apartment for a while working on something else and I'm not really feeling like I'm in the headspace of my world, I will turn on the playlist as I scroll through a Pinterest board, and it's just... I don't love the word, but it's just like good vibes. And that just immediately puts me back into the story and the world, and I'm ready to write again. So those are my main 10 tips, but I also have 3 little bonus pieces of advice. Something that has worked magic for me is keeping friendly reminders and writing motivation and writing quotes visible from my desk. I decided to make a writing motivation cork board that is sitting on my desk with all of my very friendly reminders and all of my favorite writing quotes, including things like, if you want to change the world, then you must pick up your pen and write. And then a quote that's something like, The first draft is me shoveling sand into a sandbox so that later I can build castles, and the first draft is as bad as the book is ever going to get, and other things like that that can give me quick motivation when I need it. The second little piece of bonus advice is remembering to back up your work. Make sure you save it, make sure you back it up, send it to somebody that you trust, email it to yourself, do something. Put it on a backup hard drive. Just make sure that you have it. Make sure that you have it in multiple locations, because it is a terrible feeling to lose writing. It is something that you have worked so hard on, and then to open up your computer one day and you're missing however many words. I've had a moment where I lost 22,000 words, which at that point I think I was in like early college, and it was like 3 months of writing for me, and that was so painful. It was honestly like very devastating, and I don't want anyone else to go through that, so please back up your work. And the last thing that I want to leave you guys with today is the very friendly reminder that writing a book is a lot of work. It is very much a marathon, but remember why you're doing it. Remember that progress is progress, and that you are doing an amazing thing. Don't get down on yourself. This can be difficult, but you got this. I'm so excited for you to write a book this year. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Sara Lubratt. Make sure you like and subscribe if you have not already. I'm currently posting videos twice a week, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.